Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas, in accordance with the Education Act, Chapter 3901, the government has the responsibility for managing the education system. And whereas the government has overseen the deterioration of the educational sector and has failed to maintain our school infrastructure, implement data-driven measures to make the delivery of special education more equitable and accessible to the citizenry, optimize curriculum development to reflect our labor needs, and whereas the government has limited access to technical vocational training and qualifications, be it resolved that this House condemn the government for its failures and mismanagement of the education system, and be it further resolved that this House call on the government to immediately implement data-driven measures to guarantee the successful future development of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, allow me to first off thank you for the opportunity to raise this motion on our Private Members' Day. And as I begin my contribution, I would like to recognize the uniqueness of having a Private Members' Day on the first day of March. Madam Speaker, those who are familiar with our standing orders know our Private Members' Day usually falls in the last last Friday of our sittings for the month. But here we are on the 1st of March, and I don't believe in coincidences. So it got me in a reflective period when the leader of government, business, announced the date for this Private Members' Day. Because March 2024, Trinidad and Tobago, all of our major religions will join in a period of fasting and reflection. All of our major religions. At the end of this month, you will have the Easter holiday coincide with Shouter Baptist Liberation Day. You would have the globe looking at Women's History Month in the month of March. We have our students who will face the SCA examination. And so, as I prepared for my motion, I took the day as correct, Pagua is also in this month. I took the day as an opportunity on how we should take the approaches to this motion, to this Private Members' Day. We are dealing, in fact, with the education sector. We are dealing with the future of Trinidad and Tobago. We are dealing with the building blocks of what the next generation of Trinidad and Tobago will meet. And so what does my motion ask us to contemplate, Madam Speaker? My motion here today is not about the Ministry of Education or the inner workings of the Ministry of Education. My motion here today is not about personalities involved within the Ministry of Education or the education sector. It is about the education system. It asks us as a parliament, as representatives of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to sit and contemplate whether or not the education system is working for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The ministry may be working fine. They may show up at 8:30, 8 a.m. and finish at 4 p.m. and all the boxes may be checked. So this is not what we're asked to contemplate. We have to figure as a parliament, we are looking as we reflect on the motion, whether or not we can agree from the realities that face us, whether the system promotes the culture, the vision, the goals and the values and the outcomes that we hope to generate to create the Trinidad and Tobago that we hope to see. A well-functioning education system, Madam Speaker, not only equips individuals with the knowledge and skills needed to succeed in the workforce, but it also fosters critical thinking, creativity, problem-solving abilities that are essential for innovation and progress. The education system is the cornerstone of development across every society globally. And dare I say, it is the most important sector, Madam Speaker, that faces us in Trinidad and Tobago that is under the purview of this House. The students are at the heart of my motion here today, Madam Speaker. The people of Trinidad and Tobago are at the heart of my motion here today, because what we are asked to contemplate is, given that the government has overseen the deterioration of the education sector, what does that mean for tomorrow's teachers, civil servants, policemen and women, business owners, and even politicians? What type of society are we creating, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, education promotes tolerance, it promotes societal cohesion, and it gives us the building blocks for society. So I ask everybody who is willing to get involved in this motion here today, approach this motion with a sense of seriousness and with respect for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And so, Madam Speaker, it is important for us now to ground ourselves in the realities that are facing Trinidad and Tobago, the education sector in Trinidad and Tobago. We must ground ourselves in the reality because it makes it easier, where, despite us being sitting on opposite sides of the House, that we can accept certain things as fact. So, the first fact is the highest budgetary allocation is given towards the education sector. Over the past few years, we have seen increasing budgetary allocations to the education sector. And so what we have to ask ourselves is, are we seeing value for money? Is the money being placed within the education sector giving us the results that we hope to achieve? And if we are seeing budgetary allocations in the billions of dollars annually, then we must also contemplate the fact that it may not be a resource problem, but a management problem. A management problem that falls squarely on the policymakers, the executive of Trinidad and Tobago at this time. Money is being spent, but the solutions are treating only with the symptoms. There is an ad hoc approach. There is a reactionary approach. Every time we raise an issue, you get a quick reaction, but no sustainable solution. And so, Madam Speaker, again, my motion asks us to look at whether or not there is a lack of will within the system to develop and implement being a key word that I would come to over and over in my motion, because we get the announcements, but we fail miserably on the implementation. And if we are not implementing data-driven policy, if we are not accounting to the population as to why we are spending billions of dollars, where we are spending billions of dollars, with no outcomes to show for it, then quite frankly, we are doing nothing, Madam Speaker. So my motion asks us to accept the fact that the government has failed to maintain our school infrastructure. I do not intend, I think, Madam Speaker, it would be disingenuous for anybody to get up here and argue the point that there has been no failure with respect to school infrastructure. The evidence is there, it is physical, it is in your face, it is nationwide. Whether or not you are trying is not within question. Whether or not it was a big task is not the question. Whether or not you do some and we'll do some later is not within the question today. The question is whether or not you have failed to maintain our school infrastructure. And in 9 years, with an average of $200 million spent annually, why is there so little to show for it? Why is it that we have to see parents with placards in front of schools asking for students to be removed from community centers? Why is it that we can have concrete blocks falling on students in schools within our school system? Why is it in my very own constituency I had to raise Gasparillo Secondary School one day and Happy Hill Hindu School another day, and then still being told that the money has been allocated, that we are looking into it. So, Madam Speaker, whether or not you're on the right track is not what we are adjudicating on today. What we are adjudicating on today is whether or not on March 1st, 2024, in the last 9 years, you have failed to maintain the school infrastructure. And we can say that without a doubt. We can say, Madam Speaker, that it is unacceptable, that the question isn't only about whether or not our students are comfortable, but it is a matter of respect. When you go to a school that is well maintained, that you see the benefits of the social contract that a government is in with its people, then you get a different approach to the education. When you go into a school building, the louvers falling down, the railing falling, right, things missing, the blackboard mash up, what are you saying to these students and teachers? The effect of that is that you've created a system that is not conducive to learning. It is not conducive to success. It does not say, we the government, you the government, the executive, that you respect these people who are going into this space, that you expect success from them because you are investing in the very physical infrastructure, the building, the basics. And so, Madam Speaker, when I say over and over that if we can't expect you to solve small problems, how can I expect you to solve the bigger problems that I will raise later on in this motion? I started with infrastructure because that is basic common sense. It is basic maintenance schedules. It is the most basic of part of the education sector that you have failed. And so I looked in my preparation, Madam Speaker, I leaned heavily on documents prepared by and presented to the public from the Ministry of Education. So if you go to the Ministry of Education's website, and I urge every citizen in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to do so, you go under the publications, you will see various policy documents. You will see an education policy 2023 to 2027. You would see policy documents for all manner of things. What you have to ask yourself is, do you see policy implementation? And the silence will be loud, Madam Speaker. So I looked at the policy document, the Education Policy 2023 to 2027, and within that, there are a number of listed goals, strategic goals that are broken down into strategic objectives. And they address the issue of school infrastructure. It is a strategic objective of the Ministry of Education. So that must mean somebody, some hard-working, well-meaning technocrat understands the problem, and that it has been listed as an objective of the Ministry of Education to continue the maintenance and upgrade of school infrastructure and materials. And so they are, in the deliverables, they are talking about the optimization of the school infrastructure management system. And so these things tell me, Madam Speaker, that the ideas are there, that you recognize that to fix a small problem like school infrastructure, it may be an expensive problem, but it is not one that requires any genius level thinking to say if something is broken, if the roof is falling down, fix it, Madam Speaker. That they recognize that if you implemented a maintenance schedule, that you don't wait for something to fall down completely and try to build it over, that we would be in a different and better space. So if you recognize that, if it is in your policy document, the question that has to be answered by the government speakers here today is why are you not doing it? Where is the implementation? What is the block to implementation? Because we've accepted it is not money. $1 billion allocation. We can accept it is not the idea because it is in your policy document. So you have to answer today in this motion, which gives you the opportunity to, from a very reflective space, as to what is preventing you from doing the basic, doing right by the teachers and students of our country to say that we'll fix your schools. So, Madam Speaker, as I continue along my motion, the motion speaks to the failure to implement data-driven measures to make the delivery of special education more equitable and accessible to the citizenry. Madam Speaker, we cannot speak about inclusion. We cannot speak about national development. We cannot speak about a Trinidad and Tobago for all if our policies do not contemplate the most vulnerable amongst us. We cannot speak about an education sector that is inclusive and equitable if it is inaccessible to members of our population. And so, again, Madam Speaker, it was never my wish to come here and mislead the House, so I ground my motion, the things that I am bringing in my motion, on documents produced by the Ministry of Education. So if they are going to contradict me, they have to be prepared to contradict themselves and say that they have new data that is not yet published for public consumption. So in the Ministry's reporting structure, there's a section on special education. So you're looking at equity in access and participation. It is broken down across the primary education system, the secondary education system. And so they included a section on special education. And Madam Speaker, if you'd allow me to just read it into the record. The Ministry of Education notes that most special schools are privately owned. Only 27.2% or 12 special schools are public schools. And then they go on to show the enrollment. And then they talk about equity in terms of the gender access. So there were 63.8% on average more male than female students in the public special schools over the period. And that's it. Madam Speaker, that is it on special education. That is it. That is what you tell the population. That is how far you've contemplated accessibility, inclusivity, access. That is it. Well, I looked, unless they hid it, I mean. And so, when I speak about accessibility, when we talk about barriers to entry, the acceptance that most of these schools are privately owned, Madam Speaker, we have to now think about what they say when they say the all-of-government approach. You have access to the data from the Ministry of Health, from the Ministry of Social Development, to gather what is required, what is needed by our citizens. If you understand what special needs or special needs access means and inclusivity within the education system, you are supposed to be thinking about the physical structures of the school. You are supposed to be thinking about teacher training, the incentivizing a new level of teachers or instructors who can come into the system and contemplate a more inclusive education system across the board. So you are looking at personnel. You are looking at, as the Minister of Local Government likes to tell us, you're looking at plant and machinery, you are looking at personnel, you are looking, correct. And so that you can apply that same system and you can honestly rate yourselves, you can measure your progress, and you can be very honest with the population and say, we have not done our best. And so when I look through the documents and I look at what is presented for special education, and every year during the budget process in the Standing Finance Committee, we raise what is being allocated. Is it enough? Yes, because we have these schools, but are we contemplating a holistic approach to our education system? Madam Speaker, when in the preparation of policy documents for the United National Congress, we sat within our caucus and had a very important discussion on the introduction of psychometric testing in the early years so that you can make your education system that you can create it and have it targeted towards the students who are most in need. Gone are the days where students who have attention issues should just be put in the back of the class and ignored. Gone are the days where you can use pejorative terms and dismissive terms to students rather than meeting them where they are and tailoring the system for equitable access to success. These are things that I can see across the board the technocrats have contemplated. The information is there. The knowledge is there. The only thing I can conclude is that the political will is what is missing. I'll go back to where I started. The money is also there. So don't tell me it is a resource problem. It is that as you contemplated your priorities, you did not include inclusive education, special education access as a major priority of this government. And you must answer today. You have an opportunity to answer as to why. Going down the list, Madam Speaker, I've asked the House to contemplate whether or not the education sector under the management of this administration, if they fail to optimize curriculum development to reflect our labor needs. I don't know how they come to answer that, Madam Speaker, because that much is clear. Again, going through the policy documents, I see a lot about curriculum overhaul, and I'll go through some of the things that they have presented within their documents. But the key part at the end is whether or not they've been optimized to reflect our labor needs. And so, Madam Speaker, look around. If you are in your constituencies as we are, we know the instances of youth unemployment. I am sure everyone in this House, all 41 representatives, you are met with stacks of resumes of students who went through the system, did everything right, they did their very best, and for years now, trying to find a job. Years. Correct. As my colleague, the member for Couva South, reminded me, every time there is an advert, when they are the cruise ship, the lines were shocking to even me, that so many people were so in such a desperate space to just find work. These aren't persons, Madam Speaker, who dropped out of the system, because I'll get to that, because there's a number for that. These are persons, even when you looked at the recruitment for our prison service, TTPS, etc. Oh no. Sorry, Madam Speaker. When we looked at the lineup, these are persons who have their 5 CSEC subjects. These are persons who, again, you were told, you go to school, study hard, apply yourself, and that you'll be okay. And the shock is, you're not. You come out of school, and you're looking around. University graduates, Madam Speaker, every time I speak about GATE, I don't only address the cuts over the years, but I make it a point to say, if you are looking at incentives, GATE is an incentive for a citizen to go into tertiary education because you are getting met with, you're getting a cost reduction. So it is an incentive program by an executive. Well, do it in a smart way. Do it in a targeted way. Consider what are the sectors that we are deficient in. Where are we? We are begging for pathologists. We are begging for criminologists. We're begging for all sorts of things. But you wouldn't contemplate, critically think about your incentive. Don't just make an announcement, $400 million or this bursary and that bursary, but contemplate how you are targeting your incentives so that when you come out of school, you're not sitting down home watching your degree. Madam Speaker, that is a heartbreaking scenario. It is a heartbreaking scenario to look at our curriculum, to go through from primary, secondary school. You are going through the aspects of teaching and learning. And when you come out, you don't know how to function as a citizen. We are in a technological age, Madam Speaker, and we run an analog system in our schools.
Shame.
You are telling me that the students who are going into school in 2024 are not going to be adequately prepared for the world that they will meet when they graduate. Well, and so, Madam Speaker, I looked at, like I said, the ministry's documents on curriculum reform. They have, there were a lot of instructive things, and again, I urge every citizen, I certainly urge every parliamentarian, if you haven't already, read the documents that are presented on the Ministry of Education's website. It should be instructive for you as well. And so that a lot of the work that is being contemplated in terms of curriculum reform, the extensive research, the wide-reaching stakeholder consultations, those took place in 2013. That would have been under a different administration, Madam Speaker. So in 2013, the nuts and bolts, the work of curriculum development was done. And the implementation would have taken place over the years and coming up to 2017. And so they've been looking at the learning outcomes where we're looking at agri-science, English language arts, math, physical education, science, social studies, etc. Values, character, and citizenship education within the school and at the primary level. And I went back now, Madam Speaker, to their 8 identified areas of focus where we get the strategic objectives and the goals. And in terms of the curriculum development, under the requirements, what they've been listing as the needs, I'll read it for you. To revise the curriculum to support the holistic development of the 21st century skills and values, attitudes and behaviors of the ideal Trinidad and Tobago citizen, under the key programs and projects listed multiple times under each strategic objective is device provisions for teachers and students, replacement of devices at school labs. Madam Speaker, I couldn't believe that. Because all that told me is bad mind will kill you in here, Madam Speaker. Because you met a device program. You met it, you say, I don't like it, I throw it away. You did not take a minute. You did not apply your critical thinking skills to say, we will optimize it, we will review it, things could be better. You kept the curriculum development model from 2013, but the implementation strategies, which included the provision of these devices, you throw it away. It could never make sense. So Madam Speaker, again, I know this government well. Anything that works well, they will say, look at us. We kept the stakeholder consultation. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We kept it, and we moved on. And so that is how a responsible government works. So they'll take the credit on that end. And then they'll be like, well, we couldn't keep that laptop program. You know, them laptop wasn't good. It wasn't good, and we couldn't do that. But now, 2024, years later, under your strategic objective, you're still fighting up with device provision. That is, if you had optimized the program to your liking, instead of taking that slash and burn approach, you would have been in a different space. Your reporting, your accountability to the people of Trinidad and Tobago would have been different here today. Now we have to come and make excuses and do a dance and hope for the best. Because I can tell you, it is your documents that are selling you out. Madam Speaker, the question of device provision is repeated across the key programs and objectives. It goes without saying that part of an equitable access to education, part of contemplating our use of technology, a key critical lesson learned out of the COVID-19 pandemic is that you cannot revert to an analog system. This does not mean distance learning. It does not mean remote learning. It means integrating properly, integrating fully ICT and technology within our school curriculum, utilizing that to create a citizen who is not going to be out of depth when they come out of the school system. Madam Speaker, as I look at the curriculum development point, it brings me to something that troubles, I am sure, every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. It brings me to the question of school violence and what we have been seeing. Over the past few years, I have raised on several occasions that we can utilize the curriculum, that we can use the 8 hours that students are in school to create age-appropriate, targeted interventions that will create a solution to our violence problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, what we keep getting from the government are committees, short-term solutions. We're looking at the correlation of TTPS within the school system. We have an issue with school safety officers that Tutor is talking about. But in this wider discussion, is it hard for them to contemplate looking at things like conflict resolution, emotional regulation, student access to safe reporting structures and intervention? Is it that every year we have to come here and say, do not undervalue the student support services? Look at your curriculum, look at the spaces where you can make unique interventions, be innovative, don't be so, basic that the first thing that you'll look to do is say, listen, we will include our values component, but we'll do it from Form 1. And not to think about where you're getting the instructors, how are you bringing people into the system. And so, thank you. And so, Madam Speaker, on the issue of curriculum development, and again, the duty of the government in responding to this motion today, will not be sufficient for you to say, well, we do this, Tell us the outcomes that you expected. Tell us where you have seen results. And if you have seen results or if you have not seen results, tell us where you intend to pivot. Because the nexus of a private member's motion, the importance of a private member's motion, is to utilize the accountability factor of the Parliament. That when you stand up here today, account to the public for the interventions, account for the money, account for the interventions, and tell us if you've recognized there's a problem that you'll do this differently, or this will be the different part. Madam Speaker, as I move along my motion, we have the recital that the government has limited access to technical vocational training and qualifications. Now I know they have about 3 people lined up to tell me what is going on in the Ministry of Youth Development. You have people lined up to that, and so I know, and that you will say, so therefore it is wrong to say they have limited access to technical vocational. I will explain where I am coming from, and if you can still defend yourself, so be it, but I doubt. So Madam Speaker, we have had a slew of announcements about improved technical vocational spaces. We have looked at across the increased spending within the technical vocational spaces. I've asked a question for written answer, which I've gotten a response for, and that formed part of my thinking around putting that recital. In that, despite these announcements, despite all of these additional post-secondary spaces, because the answer that the Minister for Youth Development would contemplates a post-secondary, you are already out of the system, right? So I am talking about if you are within, yes, so scratch it off, right? Take a new line so that I'm helping those who are responding, that we can, when we look at the technical vocational spaces, TVET within our system, the first major stumbling block that this government will face is the lack of instructors. That there are not sufficient persons to come into the system to optimize the programs that you are hoping to bring into the system. And so that when you have made the announcement that you will be bringing in more instructors, where you get to account today is how are you properly incentivizing that program? How are you taking, where are you getting persons to come in and teach the woodworking, teach the tailoring, and because my question for written answer showed me and showed the Parliament that we do not have sufficient instructors to get people in the classes. So in the strategic objectives and the implementation, they keep talking about a communication program and a strategy to get people more interested. How do you take away the stigma of a technical vocational education? How do you get people interested? How do you engender that entrepreneurial culture? And so, you know, Madam Speaker, what the PNM administration would have met in 2015 are policies that contemplated some of these big questions. That the People's Partnership Administration understood that throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular in rural communities, there is a culture of apprenticeship. There is a culture of if there's a mechanic, the mechanic will teach some people within the system, within the community, and they have the skill set, but what they do not have is the paperwork, the certification. And so, and that they may not have the time and the money to go back in to gain an education of something that they already knew. And so you created a test, a space where you can have your competency assessed, graded, and once you have, it shows that it is satisfactory, you will get the certification to now monetize your skill set in a bigger, better way. That, Madam Speaker, is a government that thinks about people and thinks about the day-to-day needs of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You don't need a new program every week. You don't need a new ministry. You don't need a new policy document. You just need to find a way to make life easier for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And so if you have a skill set, you can demonstrate the competency, you as the executive can make a way for this to happen in the shortest possible time frame. And that is how you'll create an entrepreneurial culture. Don't send them back to school to teach them what they know. They could probably teach you better. And so, if you were looking at our communities, we hear about the agriculture homestead program. We hear about all of these new programs, right? The constituency I represent is our agriculture-based constituency. We have some of the best farmers in this country. We maintained, you know, during the pandemic, we helped feed this nation via the green boxes because the produce was coming from the constituency of Tabaquite, Madam Speaker. And so that you have these systems in place. Connect the persons who want to learn with the persons who are currently doing it. Do not reinvent the wheel. Do not spend millions of dollars and then not be able to account to the effectiveness of it. Why are we not looking at fishing programs in Mayaro, agricultural programs in Tabaquite, and utilizing what is already taking place within these areas? What is their natural base, their natural element that they are going into, and optimizing it? Because we're not trying to make lives easier for citizens. We're trying to make announcements and pat ourselves in the back. And at the end of the day, it's just saying you are successful without being able to demonstrate elements of the success. And those are the things we have to stand against, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I went through the elements of the motion that I have presented because I understand that there will be some difficulty on the side of the government to join with us in condemning the government for its failures and its management of the education system. But do not take the word condemn as just criticism. It is an opportunity for you to do better. You can recognize that you have not been doing your best. And if it is your best, you can recognize that you are unfit for the job. And so you have two opportunities for learning here. And that when we say we condemn the government for its failures, that we are, as the opposition, looking for a way to point us in the right direction. Because, Madam Speaker, as I said at the beginning, this motion is about the future of Trinidad and Tobago, and we cannot afford to fail. We cannot afford one more year of this mismanagement. We cannot afford another year of excuses. We cannot afford another $6 billion budget and not $6 billion worth of outcomes. Madam Speaker, when we call on this House to immediately implement data-driven measures to guarantee the successful future and development of Trinidad and Tobago, what we're saying is don't create a unit called data-driven measures. We don't need that, right? Don't come together and form a committee to look into the data to drive the measures. Don't do that. Quite frankly, we are tired of that. What we are saying is, start where you are. Accept that you have failed. Start where you are, accept that you have failed. And going forward, account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago where you intend, how you intend to do better. Do not come, Madam Speaker, I know we've seen it, private members day after private members day, that the first speaker, second speaker will get up to talk about the motion. And oh, we didn't need to do this motion here today. We could have used this time for another motion. We could have been talking about this, and that the opposition wants to paint the country in a negative light. Don't, if you have that as an introduction, scratch it off. Don't bother. Right? Come to this parliament, understand it.
You have 3 minutes left for full time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am concluding my contribution here today, so I am fall within the time. When you stand in this House today to contribute to this private members' day, understand that you are speaking to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and as the government, you have a responsibility to speak for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and you have a duty to account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So whether or not you want to tell me what you're doing is irrelevant. But when you stand here today, you have a duty to answer the questions, to account for where these $6 billion have been going, for why we have the dropout rates that we have, for why we are seeing the levels of school violence, for why the physical infrastructure of the school is crumbling. You have a duty to account. And so, Madam Speaker, as I move this motion here today, I do so in hope, in contemplative hope, that we can get this right. That for the future of Trinidad and Tobago, that we can put every difference that we may have aside, as March showed us Trinidad and Tobago a paradise, that we can come together as a nation and we can build the Trinidad and Tobago that we hope to see. And so, Madam Speaker, as I draw to the conclusion of my motion, I look forward to solution-driven, solution-oriented, and a place that the people of Trinidad and Tobago can look at our parliament and see hope, can see progress, and can see a future of Trinidad and Tobago that is not scary, because they do not have that today. And so, Madam Speaker, with those few words, I beg to move.